what makes ASEAN and Singapore a good place to invest when it comes to AI and a bit the future of agentic and some of the key tech moves the ecosystem players are going to make?
Well, the landscape is a very wide one. And when companies look at what they would like to devote their time and attention to doing, it also depends on, what their starting points are. So if we just look at one type of companies that we could describe as being at the frontier. When you are a frontier company and you're thinking about how best to deploy your resources, the idea that in Southeast Asia there is a market, and this is a market that is receptive, and at some point in time, this market is interested to invest, this market is interested to try new things, I think that is an attractive one. Yiming already spoke about that. The report also covers that quite extensively. But then when they go to the second level of decision making, the conditions that they are looking for, that I think throws a bigger challenge to them. Because it's one thing to find a location where they can access compute, they have basic infrastructure that they don't have to worry about. It's quite another thing whether they can access a pool of talents. As companies, when they relocate from one place to another or they start up a new place, your first series of actions almost always involves poaching, right? So you must have a rich environment and rich ecosystem from which to poach in order to get started. It's not necessarily a bad thing. It creates a certain dynamism and vibrancy in the market. But if this ecosystem, of talent isn't expanding, then, we're just poaching from one another. It doesn't grow. So it has to be a talent environment that is also organically growing because people are attracted. And why are they attracted? Maybe it's because, the living environment is not bad. But I think when it comes to AI talents who are sought after everywhere in the world, their interest is in plugging in to networks, where there are like-minded talents, people who are engaged in solving interesting challenges, people who bring something to the table. They have a new insight. They read a paper. They came across this other AI researcher, or they came across someone with domain expertise, and they are trying out this, very interesting idea. And you kind of need to have that buzz to plug into. That's a very important consideration. But I would say that for a company at the frontier of AI, probably the single most important factor that they consider is who can grow together with me. Because I'm devoting all of my precious time and resources to try and identify a worthy use case. The organization that owns the use case must not only have, the resources, they must have the ambition. They must dream big. They must have the wherewithal to grow along with me. And if I can only pick a few partners to grow together with, where can I find them? And the reason why this is so important is because when you are at the frontier, it's so competitive. What you lose is time and opportunity. If, in a way, you invested it in with the wrong partner, the partner didn't lead you anywhere because of whatever reasons, your experimentation just didn't go far enough. So I think this is what makes Singapore interesting. This is where you will plug into a healthy ecosystem. I think the bench strength is here, but what I also see is that there is growing appetite for risk-taking. There is a certain amount of dare. There is imagination. And when I spoke with a number of, the leaders of frontier AI companies, that's what's drawing them. That's what they're thinking about when they look at the landscape and they say, here is this interesting market. How do we, find ourselves a gateway? How do we find ourselves a foothold? I think there is just one other thing I would add. These individuals, these organizations, when they are doing their calculations, equally they look at where you are putting your resources. It's not harmful if you are putting in resources to build up data centers, but that's really hygiene. That's very baseline. They're looking at whether you're putting in resources into R&D. Are you investing in science? If you are doing those things, then perhaps they see that there is a greater headroom for them to also bring what they have that is the best that can contribute. So I would say that these are the number of factors that help frontier AI companies think about Singapore when they try to choose a location to access the Southeast Asian market, as well as, of course, the broader Asian market.
The two words that come up a lot are speed and trust. And so, this is, of course, a technology that moves a lot faster than regulation. And what role could Singapore play for more responsible, if you want, experimentation, and also for unlocking speed? Because to some extent, some people are a bit constrained and there might be fear in the system or too much risk. But what role could Singapore and ASEAN play where people could actually lean forward and go faster while maintaining the trust with the technology?
Daniel, I guess when you think about speed, you're thinking about, how quickly can we scale the adoption to the wider economy so that it doesn't stay only within frontier companies. You want to find a way for it to diffuse. I think at the individual level, and the numbers bear them out, at the individual level, many of us have experienced what I could refer to as an IKEA moment. An IKEA moment in the sense that, well, when you use ChatGPT, you realize that it's not that difficult to use. When you experiment with Notebook LLM, and then you realize that, you can create a podcast too. It's not that difficult. If you use Nano Banana, you can create all these fancy things, right? And then that is the IKEA moment for us at the individual level. But if we unpack it a little bit, how does this IKEA moment come about? This IKEA moment comes about, using IKEA as an example. Well, first time you step into IKEA, you've never assembled anything on your own. But you see that there are many people, seemingly very confident about buying stuff that they can bring home and then, build up. And so maybe you think that I can't be all that bad. Let me try it too. Then when you bring it home and you unpack this package, what actually helps you to get the job done? There has to be some simple instructions. The way the product is designed is relatively easy for you to assemble. And maybe the first time you build a bookcase or a wardrobe, no, maybe not a wardrobe for a start, a bookcase and maybe assemble some simple tables, the three legs don't exactly balance and it's not perfect, right? But you gain some confidence, and the next time you buy an object, you assemble it slightly better, you pay more attention to the instructions that are given to you. The IKEA moment for individuals came about with ChatGPT. You see other people using it, and find that it's not that difficult for you to use it. But the IKEA moment for enterprises, that's still not far enough. It's not gone wide enough. We have maybe about 63, 65 AI centers of excellence built up already. When we first started, we kind of thought, who would be so brave as to think that they could get this off the ground in Singapore? And then we saw something interesting happen. The first 10 was not easy. The next 10 was a little bit easier. By the time we got to 30, they were updating me, Yiming's team, they were updating me at such a fast clip that I was pleasantly surprised. And it seems to me that at least among some of the leading companies in Singapore, the IKEA moment has arrived.
Yeah.
But we're not satisfied with 60, 100 AI centers of excellence. This is a democratizing technology. Rightfully, it should get to the thousands, the tens of thousands, right? And that's something that we should work towards. Now, then, to your question, how do you get to this kind of scale? And how does experimentation come about? It's not going to be the individual buyer of the IKEA products that do the testing. You buy it knowing that it was built with a certain degree of reliability. In the early days, I think they made a great effort of showing you how many times the sofa was jumped on, and the beds can withstand, your kids, playing a fool on it for I don't know how many times. But the same concept applies. When we invest in building up our testing capabilities, when we develop our governance frameworks, these are not necessarily intended for the last user of AI to go and satisfy themselves with. It's going to be the aggregators. It's going to be the equivalent of the IKEAs that has to invest in this effort so that when they distribute the AI tools, it comes with a certain assurance, it comes with a certain seal, it comes with a certain certification of reliability. And that is the journey that we are going through right now. And I'm reasonably encouraged by the response. Certainly, I think within the ecosystem in Singapore, there is a good understanding that if you want this technology to go further, faster, you need to assure the people who are using it that it is safe. It's a little bit, you've heard this many times before, you can drive faster, you can, I don't know that you actually shift to fifth gear now, you just step on it. But only because we know there are seat belts, there are airbags, and you just have to develop these systems. So this responsible experimentation, we have to think about where it needs to happen. It's not going to be at the individual level or the enterprise level. Very often it has to be at the level of the aggregate that gets this done.
One of the things we picked up as you work with the private sector is last year was all about use cases. This year it's all about what's the reimagine moment and how can you reimagine your company, your country, agentic first. If we were, and I know you have always bold ambitions, if we were to go out perhaps 2 or 4 years and you think about what you would have achieved, what are some of the markers for Singapore in terms of leading the way? What's that reimagine marker for Singapore in this AI revolution?
I think it has to be in, the people that you speak with, how they are describing their work to you today, compared to 4 years down the road. It has to be the business owners and how they're describing to you their next big idea, how they're going to grow their market, and how they're finding new and interesting ways. And I think when you speak with individuals, when you speak with enterprises, also if you speak with government officials, you see that there is a change in the way they think about their work. Yesterday, I was it yesterday or maybe the day before, our government technology agency, they moved in the new premise in Punggol Digital District. And so they had a little, sort of among staff only opening. So I was there. And our team that is helping the whole of the public sector to think about the use of AI. They told me that the platform that they built, it is a platform that enables public officers to build bots, AI bots for themselves. So for example, Daniel, you are, a colleague who is so inquisitive. You're always asking me questions. And in answering all of your questions, I have no time to do my own work. And imagine if I have 10 colleagues like you, constantly doing that. What if I build a bot to answer your questions? That's exactly what many officers have done.
Good idea.
We have something like 30,000 bots built amongst public officers. Are all of them fantastic bots? Of course not. But a good number of them are actually pretty good.
Yeah.
And this is the kind of momentum that we'd like to see, the enthusiasm, The aha moment has reached the individual. The aha moment has reached what they can do in the workplace. It needs to reach the whole organization. It needs to, bring about a certain excitement across different industries, sectors, and then you grow it like that. So
Oh, amazing. Well, once you have that bot, perhaps we can share the bots. That would be very, very helpful. Yes.
quite easy to build.
Exactly, yeah, exactly. I know we're going to run out of time, but I think we had one question that we also sourced from the audience, and you talked about talent in your first remarks. When we work with clients, it's very clear that any AI transformation is actually, it's not technology, it's actually a people transformation. And how you had a lot of ideas on how do you make Singapore a bit of a hub for a AI-enabled workforce. Say a bit more about this vision you have on how you actually solve the talent side of AI and make Singapore and ASEAN a hub.
In just the 2 years since we refreshed our national AI strategy, I think our thinking has also shifted. The way we look at talent has also shifted. At that point, we could kind of think of talent at 3 tiers. We were thinking of AI creators, people who design the most sophisticated models, and they put out AI tools that the world wants to use. Then we were thinking of AI practitioners. These are basically data scientists, machine learning engineers who will have to then bring these ideas back into their specific context in order to make sure that there is an actual useful application. But we also thought that at that point in time, if you didn't have the broad base of AI users, right, it couldn't, support AI innovation in a very significant way. So a very simplified way of thinking about AI creators, AI practitioners, and AI users. But I think our perspectives have evolved. The AI talent ecosystem is much richer than that. And the best example I could give to you is perhaps when you think about our airport. If you think about our airport, you think about how you get a terminal going. Somebody has to design the terminal. Somebody has to get it built. After getting it built, someone has to make sure that there are systems and processes to maintain it on a regular basis, right? And someone has to think about what are the most useful technologies to apply to make this terminal run well. Now, comes along somebody else and says, we have this new, exciting, great idea, right? And then they have to also assemble a cast of talents to build yet another terminal. But if you ask yourselves, even just Changi Terminal, Changi Airport, T1, T2, T3, T4, in future T5, what makes this airport so outstandingly, great? Of course, each terminal has to be great. But you don't, as a user, as a traveler, stick with one terminal. It depends on how the airlines have routed, and it depends on how we optimize the slots that are available to us. So when you think about building a new terminal like T5, on a standalone basis, it is outstanding. But its real value is unleashed when it's able to connect back to the existing, cluster of terminals. And to do that is really difficult because you'll have to think in terms of, well, how do the people move from this terminal to the other terminals? Even if you can move the people, how do you move the vehicles that move them? And very importantly, how do you move the baggage? So that requires a whole new way of thinking. Now then, if you think about this is just the hardware, the infrastructure, the logistics of getting things moving around, you don't just want a shell where people travel in and out of. You want it to be an experience. Then you think about, the other terminals, they are very green. Can we bring the same type of greenery? And then you ask yourself, what makes it possible for you to deliver it? Well, you need your own horticultural experts. I don't know how many airports hire horticultural experts, but Changi does. Now, if you extrapolate this and think about what AI could potentially do for us, AI transforming manufacturing, AI transforming healthcare, AI transforming banking, the real value is not just that they are individually transformed as industries, as enterprises within the industries, it's when you add them all up and they interact with one another in brand new ways that were not required before, but also not as impactful as before. So, in a way, when we think about talent, the, 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 the need, the ambition also has to grow. Yeah, you can't just think about them in a very narrow, way. You have to think about the whole ecosystem coming together with talents in every nook and cranny at every level. And that's what I think will give us the most returns. I don't want to give too much away. In any case, we run out of time. As it turns out, in less than 30 hours, the Prime Minister will deliver, who is also Finance Minister, he will deliver the budget statement. And he will have more to say about it. But what he says, what he's going to say, reflects this sort of maturing of our thinking about what it takes to make this technology really come alive and enable this democratizing general purpose technology to really give us an uplift that we have not even possibly imagined the full extent possible.
Well, Minister, thank you for this exciting vision about Singapore. By the way, I love that point of this multiplier effect of talent, like your analogy on the terminals. But thank you very much for this discussion, and I think we're out of time, so we're gonna wrap. But perhaps a round of applause for the minister.
Thank you, Daniel. Thank you.